if you could all take your seats, please. We've got a tight 15 minutes because the NATO-Ukraine Council is about to begin. And I know everyone in the audience has some interesting things that they would love to have answered by the two of you. So Andrei Yermak, Mr. Yermak, how wonderful to see you. Minister Landsbegis. I was talking to the minister, and because the council's about to start, and because of the bravery, courage that you've shown Ukraine, we actually think we're going to throw protocol to the wind and turn first to you. And I wonder if you could talk about, I was with you not so long ago, a few weeks ago, with President Zelensky in his office during a time of attacks. And President Zelensky said if he didn't get what he wanted at the NATO summit, that he wouldn't come because he would consider it a betrayal to the Ukrainian people. So he came. He hasn't got entirely what we wanted. We read that in his Twitter feed. Give us your feeling of why he decided to come. And then some people argue the communique was a prudent outcome. NATO doesn't want to go to war with Ukraine. Others call it a missed opportunity. I'd love to have your view.
Thank you very much. First of all, of course, the President Zelensky, President of Ukraine, come to Vilnius because it's important to be here and to be the partners, to be the alliance, and first of all, the unity of NATO and support which we really received during these more than 500 days of this war. It's a very, very strong signal to the aggressor that, first of all, that alliance and the partners not just believe, they're sure about our victory. The second, let's see, it's today it's not finished. And we are looking for some very serious results of the summit. And of course, our president, he's a very principled person. And of course, everything which he said before, and our estimate and our feelings, you can listen, you can see. He is very honest. He is always very clear, declared, and the position of our country. But let's see. We really will have in several minutes starting this very important, I think the maybe most important for Ukraine meetings, the NATO alliance, in which we will discuss, first of all, of course, the continue of the military aids, which very important for us to win this war. And of course, we will continue, and I hope it will be today, one very important moment for the security guarantees for Ukraine in the way to be a member of the NATO.
And just a quick follow-up then on that, in this balance between prudent outcome, missed opportunity, are you saying it all depends how things go from now? Because if you had listened to President Zelensky's or read President Zelensky's tweet from yesterday, where he's calling the language about Ukraine and NATO absurd, it seems to me that this is a movement in another direction now.
I hope that this summit not will be missed the opportunity, but once again, you can everything listen and see in the results of this day. We have very positive bilateral meeting already with some partners, and they look with the positives of the results of this summit.
Thank you. And then just finally, how has it been received in Ukraine thus far?
Sorry?
This summit and the outcomes. How are Ukrainians receiving this and responding to it inside Ukraine?
What's the mood in Ukraine about?
Mood in Ukraine.
You know, we have more than 100 days of war. And you know, all us in Ukraine, we are living in very specific reality, the reality of the war. And of course, Ukrainians looking for this summit and for the results in some very concrete things. And of course, you know, and these seconds, these minutes, our heroes continue to fighting. And this is, you know, for us, it's sometimes these days, it's the very special atmosphere, because here a peace, here the silence, here's not you listen, not listen, the sirens, and you personally, and my colleague and friends personally was and can see this reality in Ukraine. But, you know, our nations show all these 500 days that how we are brave, how it's possible to not be afraid, how it's possible to fight for independence, for freedoms. And of course, we hope that today's results of this summit will be more inspired and give for emotional and very important, not just emotional, some very practical support of our people, for our soldiers to go forward. And I'd like to say very important things, that we not stopping our fightings. No exist any force which can make us stop us till we liberated all our territories, we back all our people, and really win this war. And I'm absolutely sure that it will be our joint victory.
So, Mr. Yermak, I think that's a great transition to the Prime Minister. Having been with you recently in Kiev, I slept a lot better at night because of Patriot missiles. Here I can sleep well at night, not because of the Patriot missiles that are out there right now for your airport. Mr. Landsbegis, I followed your history a long time. I was here when you were in the Warsaw Pact and in the final days, and at the time of the Vilnius 10, ahead of your 2004 membership. Talk about this summit in that context, in the context of history, but also how you think history might remember this summit.
Well, that's an excellent question. We tend to look at Vilnius and Vilnius summits in a way that they sometimes do not offer a tactical change, but they offer a strategic opportunity. And it happened in 2014 when tactically at that day some of us felt that we might not have won the day, but at the end we won Ukraine, and Ukraine has won. I believe that something of that sort is happening these days, that somebody might have expected. Quite a lot of those here in this room and in this country expected more. That happened today, but I think that's in strategy, strategically, we won. We committed ourselves to Ukrainian membership in NATO. That's the biggest achievement, I would say, strategically. Now, where the problem lies, the way that I look at the history back. In the promise in Bucharest, even though it was a strong statement, Georgia and Ukraine will become members of NATO. It was a strong statement. The problem was not with the statement itself. It was with our lack of commitment afterwards. We did not come back. We came back to the statement 3 invasions later. That was a problem. So now I'm quite sure that we're committed, that we won't waste another year, another month, and another day staying on the question and doing everything in our power so that we stay true to the meaning that we put into the declaration. And that means, to sum up, that means that Vilnius summit was not the last stop. We have to see it as a bridge. And the next stop is Washington. So we still have a full year, lots to do, and I count on every single one of you to do your part so that Washington can actually be even more historic than Vilnius.
Thank you for that. And it being the 75th anniversary, I hope that's true. A follow-up question on that. Some say the actual communique language, because of how conditional it was made, is weaker than 2008 in Bucharest. But am I interpreting weaker language but stronger commitment toward the goal?
Yeah, I think that I was not there in the room in 2008, unfortunately, so I've just read about it and I was told about it. I think that the way it is being presented, that the consensus in 2008 was weaker. Mm-hmm. It was not there. Now it's much wider, definitely. You don't see an objection, from the people in the room who would say, Ukraine should not be part of NATO. We cannot commit ourselves to that idea. There's nobody saying that. Mm-hmm. So that is a step forward. Again, coming from Eastern flank, we tend to see the situation a tiny bit different. A tiny bit different. And for us, actually, the history has changed since the last year. That's why our wording is stronger, that's why our stance is stronger, that's why our support to Ukraine, it's more vocal. Because for us, the history runs a different course right now. And I tend to use the example of Berlin Wall. I think it's a very monumental time in European history, in world history, in 1989. So for us, last year, the wall has been rebuilt. Or it's being rebuilt. So basically, in that principle, we're back into, for us, it's Cold War. For Ukraine, it's hot war. But we're back in 1989 and going backwards. So this is where our mentality is. This is how we see the situation. And therefore, we are building on a different reality than it was in 2008.
So we all know that an alliance has to balance the long term and the short term. We also know that even, and Jake Sullivan was talking about that earlier today, unity doesn't mean you don't disagree. And press reports have it that at least 8 countries of the 31 were fighting very hard for different language, stronger language toward invitation for Ukraine. Can you, to the extent you can, where is the alliance unified? Where is it ununified? What is the crux of the differences in the room?
I would say in some cases, the horizon is, there is difference in horizon. We tend to see that the problems that we are trying to solve, the way that we're helping Ukraine, the way that Ukraine should be helped, we're talking decades of a new reality in Europe. Decades of Putin, who is still in power, who will be a dangerous neighbor, who might attack again, who might assault other neighbors, even try Article 5, how that works. We are thinking in this term. It might not happen next year. In some cases, the horizon is way shorter. Way, way shorter. We're talking years. In some cases, it's months. How do we survive this month? How do we survive till next year? How do we survive till next election?
And then, very briefly, then, your answer to the question of prudent outcome, missed opportunity.
I'm talking about the bridge.
Yeah, that's a good one. The one more question for you, then I want to go back to Mr. Yermak. The Baltic Aerospace Agreement. In all the reporting about everything else, very little has been placed on this. And then put that in the context of Swedish membership. Obviously, this was the big success of this week, and in many cases, in many respects, unanticipated. Put together this Baltic Aerospace Agreement, the Swedish membership. How does that change your region? How does it change security around the Baltics and Lithuania?
Well, I think that Swedish membership is monumental. Definitely, if we remain on the example of a bridge, so it's a pillar. Definitely, it's a very strong pillar, and the way that we frame it currently, the promise of swift accession, Swedish swift accession has been made, and now we're very much looking forward to it, but it changes the situation in the Baltic Sea dramatically. It affects defense plans that are being voted for, that are adopted, but it changes them as well. Sweden is a very strong element in all of our defense, not just Lithuania, but also Poland. Also, I mean, I'm not even talking about Sweden itself, but also Finland, also Estonia. The whole Baltic Sea, becomes a different concept. That's a very strong thing. When it comes to the air defense, we're saying that, look, we have to talk about the content. Things don't happen overnight, so it's a very strong step forward. But now we will be looking for how it will be materialized.
Thank you for that, Mr. Yermak. So not a prudent outcome, not a missed opportunity, but a bridge. What would you like to see this week's events in Vilnius be a bridge to on behalf of Ukraine? What you talked about Washington? What do you hope will happen between now and Washington? And obviously, we have a spring offensive we're talking about at the same time. So there are two battles. One of them very real and on the front lines for Ukraine against the aggressor, Putin's troops, and the other is the bureaucratic contest in NATO, where we want to land by next summer in Washington.
First of all, I hope that during this period of time, we will win this war. This will be, first of all, the most important for us, and I'm sure it will be very important for all the world. The second, of course, as we're looking during this way and to the Washington summit, of course, we will receive the fixed security guarantees, because the security guarantees to Ukraine, it's the guarantees of the security of the whole Europe. And as I said, we hope that just today we will have very important stage of issue of this security. And of course, I'm agreed with my colleagues that we are looking as a bridge, and we hope that, during these 500 days, Ukraine a lot of times surprised everybody in the world. First of all, we are surprised then it started these invasions, and somebody gave to us 3 days, 1 week, 1 month. We are surprised, and we still not just defended, we liberated our lands. The second, you remember about then the President Zelensky, Speaker of the Parliament, the head of the government, sent the documents for the candidate states. Many people was very skeptical. We already received the status. We talking about coalitions of air jets. We're talking about coalition of tanks. We're talking about the coalitions of air defense. Already it's reality. And I think that we try everything from our side to will surprise and Washington. And of course, we are looking finally, as how said Mr. President Erdogan in the last meeting with President Zelensky in Istanbul, that Ukraine have everything to be a member of the NATO. And of course, we believe in it. And I'm glad that today I think nobody in the world just don't think that it's happened. Of course, we're looking for the perspective, for the future, but not hesitation that it's happened.
So, Mr. Yermak, final question.
And I'm sorry, about your second part of the reforms and you know, in the beginning, then Vladimir Zelensky go for the presidential campaign in 2019. One of his priority was the reforms of Ukraine. I can say it's in our blood. And of course, I can say that maybe it will be difficult to find another country in the world who just, in the circumstances of this terrible war, not stopping any reforms. And we go forward, and I think many people, and Ursula von der Leyen and the European leaders many times said how really impressed by the reforms which we continue doing just during this war.
So final question, we've run out of time, so final question for each of you, Mr. Yermak and then Minister Landsbegis. You have said, President Zelensky has said that strategic commitments can't replace NATO membership. Do you still believe that? Strategic support.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yes, of course. Of course, it's, you know, we are living in so rhythm of life that immediately back to Ukraine, we continue to do all the best from our side. That just if somebody have some hesitations in the colleagues, there is no exist, and to do and go forward and not stopping, because this is the goal and this is the decisions of Ukrainian society. Today, more than 90% of Ukrainians supported and believe that very soon Ukraine will be the members of the NATO.
Thank you, Mr. Yermak. Mr. Landsbergis, the bridge, Vilnius to Washington. How should that bridge be built?
I think that there are some very practical steps that could be taken and should be taken. First of all, there was a discussion about the need for additional reforms in Ukraine. At least this is what allies agreed upon. And Ukraine has shown tremendous, unbelievable capacity to reform under duress. This has happened on the path to EU. So I think that if concrete requirements are being presented to Ukraine, I'm absolutely 100% convinced that Ukraine will deliver on those, so that we could have, to show up for the allies. That, because the statement goes that when allies agree and the conditions are met, so I'm sure that Ukraine can deliver on part of conditions.
So an invitation in Washington would be potentially possible, would be possible?
I'm convinced that it could be historic, not just because of the years.
I think that's a good spot to end on. So let me thank Mr. Yermak not just for being here, but for the courage of your country, and please send our best wishes to President Zelensky and all Ukrainians. And then Minister Landsbergis, what wonderful hosts you've been, and what an incredibly well executed and organized summit we've been taken care of so well here by every citizen of this country. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.